Hello and good morning. It is great to see all of you and meet you. My name is Victor Piñeiro. I'm always excited to visit a school, but as I was walking through the halls, I saw a few things that got me more excited. I walked in and I saw a Puerto Rican flag. Then I walked by and I saw a whole display of Puerto Rican stuff. Then I saw a third display. Are some of you Boricua? Yeah? Who's Boricua here? Okay. Some of you guys, there's some Puerto Ricans here? Are there other Latinos here? Latinos? Yes? Okay. Amazing. ¿Algo que hablan español? ¿Un poco de español? ¿Algunos? Sí. Perfecto. Okay. Pues vamos a hacer una presentación bilingüe entonces. We can do a bilingual presentation. So, I'm Victor Piñeiro. This is me when I was in third grade. This is me when I decided I wanted to be an author. So, I was 8 and somebody had let me borrow a book called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Has anybody heard of that? Has anyone read the Narnia books? I started reading them. I read The Lord of the Rings. I was hooked. I was like, I want to be an author. But it took me a long time to become an author, like super long time. And in the meanwhile, I did a few other things. And I want to share this with you because I think I saw some hands raised for people who might want to be authors. But raise your hand if you want to be a YouTube creator or somebody who does a TikToks. All right? Raise your hand if you want to if you're like an artist. Raise your hand if you want to be a game designer and design video games or board games. Okay. So, on the way to becoming an author, I also wanted to do all that stuff. So, the first thing I did is I was a 3rd and 6th grade teacher. I was that for 6 years. But my brother and I, when we were in college, actually growing up, all that we did was make YouTube videos before YouTube was around. We loved making videos. When we went to high school, we started making movies, and we decided, hey, what if we made a movie? That's kind of like something we love to do. So I taught for 6 years, and then we made this movie. That's a movie, it's a documentary, which means it's like real, and it's all about video games. So if there's any gamers among us, it's about a kind of video game that the best way to describe it, it's like the mom and dad of Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft. So if you've played those games, it's all about that sort of stuff. So we made the movie, and then I flipped and did something different. I got into social media. So I worked at an agency and I ran YouTube social media for about 7 years. So I worked with YouTube creators a lot. I worked with videos. I had a team of people who watched 1,000 YouTube videos every day. That was their job. So it was a very interesting job. I did TikTok for a little while. I worked there. I created games for Hasbro. So if you've got game designers here or people who want to be in video games, I worked in video games a little bit and I worked in board games a little bit. And nowadays I work at HBO Max. And I do innovation there, which means like artificial intelligence and things like that. But the whole time I was like, you know what? Like my dream, what I want to do is I want to write books, and it took me forever. So one day about 10 years ago, I said, hold up, how do I write a book? It was an issue because I had a pretty crazy job. I was married, I had a kid. I was like, how am I going to do this? And here's one thing that I didn't know, and let me tell you the secret when you're this age versus my age. I wrote 3 books, so I've actually written like 7 books, but I've written 3 that have been published. I wrote those books entirely on my commute to work. So 30 minutes each way. And it seems like a really little amount of time. Like who could write a book in 30 minutes a day? I've written 7. So let that be inspiration to you that like, if you have something you want to do, but you're really busy. I know middle school is super busy. You go home, you have homework, you have clubs, you have sports. You might not have time to do the creative things you want to do. Even a little bit of time every day actually creates things. You can make big things 30 minutes a day. So let's get into it. But I don't want to talk about any of this. I want to talk about, if my clicker's working, this. So this is my 3rd book. And it's the book that's really closest to my heart because this book is all about a lot of things. It's all about Puerto Rico. It takes place in Puerto Rico. Raise your hand if you've read a middle grade book, a book that's for middle schoolers that takes place in Puerto Rico, right? Congratulations. There's only one other book I've ever found. There are not a lot of books in Puerto Rico, so I was excited to write a book about Puerto Rico. Secondly, I want to talk about forgotten gods because what does that even mean? What's a forgotten god? What a weird thing, right? Third, I want to talk about the adventures I had in Puerto Rico. Fourth, I want to talk a little bit about some of the issues Puerto Rico's faced, because I bet some of you know all about them. And fifth, I want to talk about monsters. But I think we might want to start with a monster, right? Should we start with a monster? Yeah. Let's start with the monster. Okay. So here's a question. thinking about it, just think about it, raise your hand, don't yell it out. Who is your number one monster? It's a weird question. There's two ways I would talk about this, right? One is, maybe you're into anime, video games, science fiction, horror, and you do have a monster in your head that you think is awesome. Or two, maybe there's a monster who just scares you, like just terrifies you. Okay, let me get a couple of hands raised. I want to hear like a couple of monsters. Yeah.
Pennywise.
Pennywise. That's I work on Pennywise at work. Yes. Which one? Grim Reaper. That's a really good classic one. Yeah, one more.
Wendigo.
Wendigo. How did you know Wendigo? Wow, I'm impressed. So now there's all kinds of different monsters. Do any of your monsters, any of the ones that are in your head, are they up there? Raise your hand if one of them is up there. All right. Yes. Yes. So these monsters on this page are a little bit different. Has anybody here heard the word cryptid before? Wow. I am kind of blown away by y'all. Close, very close, very close, yes. So a cryptid is different from a regular monster for one important reason. Now, most people, like if I talk about Frankenstein, you guys probably don't believe that Frankenstein exists, right? Cryptids, the big difference between a normal monster and a cryptid is that cryptids, a lot of people think they're real, right? That's a very unique thing. There's a lot of people who think that the monsters on that page are real. Raise your hand if you recognize one of the monsters up here. Okay, we got some famous ones, right? Loch Ness, maybe some of you have heard the Loch Ness Monster. You have the Yeti, somebody mentioned the Wendigo, which is amazing. So all of these monsters are monsters that people have claimed to have spotted. I'm gonna say up front, I don't believe in monsters. I'm not saying they're real, but I think it's interesting that there are people who find them real. So there's one specific monster I wanna focus on. Does anybody recognize the one right above the Loch Ness Monster's head? He's little, that little guy right above the Loch Ness Monster. Has anybody here heard of the chupacabra? The chupacabra, there's a few things that are really, really unique about it. For one, it's kind of young compared to other cryptids, right? So a lot of the ones up here have been around for hundreds and thousands of years. The chupacabra has been around for exactly 30 years. Second thing, there's two things that are pretty unique about it, and it comes out from asking this question. Now, where is the chupacabra from? Ready? Raise your hand if you think the chupacabra is from Mexico. Okay. Raise your hand if you think the chupacabra is from the southern United States, like Arizona, the Southwest, New Mexico. Now, raise your hand if you think the chupacabra was first spotted in Puerto Rico. Okay, you guys have an advantage because a lot of Boricuas here. Second question is, what does it look like? Three options, ready? Raise your hand if you think the chupacabra looks like a wolf or a dog or a coyote, like kind of like wolfish and dog-like. Okay. Raise your hand if you think the chupacabra looks kind of like an alien or a reptile, like he looks kind of reptile-ish. Okay. Now raise your hand if you think the chupacabra looks like a bat or like a gargoyle. Okay. Now, these are two things that are pretty unique. Number one is, are you ready? Who was correct for the first answer? Puerto Rico. Chupacabra was first spotted in Puerto Rico, but a lot of people forgot that. Secondly, what does it look like? That's more complicated. So I'm going to quickly tell you the story of the chupacabra because I think I just recently learned it and it's kind of interesting. So it's 30 years ago exactly. It's 1995, and this is the tiny town of Canovanas. I don't know if anybody hears from that because it's a very small town, but it's like 10 miles away from San Juan. Canovanas is close to San Juan. It's next to the mountains. One day a farmer wakes up. He walks out and he finds 8 of his sheep are dead. But the sheep have 3 puncture wounds right here on the neck. Like, oh, this is strange. And the farmer says that the sheep were drained of blood. What? Everyone starts freaking out. Now, over the next 6 months, farmers all over this town start reporting creatures that were killed the same way. I was like, wait, what's going on? What is this? Now, 6 months after, we're talking August of 1995, there was 150 of these animals discovered, but nobody saw the creature. And then people in other parts of Puerto Rico started seeing the monster. First, one woman saw it in her backyard, said it looked just like an alien. Second person said it jumped through his window, it wrestled his dog, and then it ran away. People start spotting it. And now, that's when things get a little bit crazy, because that's when the world picks up on the existence, not the existence, people spotting this creature, and it goes viral. Now, obviously this is before the internet, so it doesn't really go viral, but like there's newspapers talking about it everywhere, news stations, the whole world is talking about the chupacabra. They're saying, oh my God, there's this creature, it's being spotted everywhere. And the craziest thing is, then the rest of Latin America starts spotting it too. Like, wait, what's going on? So Mexico, it starts getting spotted all over Mexico. South America, it starts getting spotted in parts of the United States, Arizona, New Mexico. What is going on and what is this creature, right? Very strange. So, no, has never killed anybody. Now here's me Google image searching chupacabra. I want to see what it looks like. Look how different it looks. You see some coyotes, you see some dogs, you see some aliens, you see some bats. Everyone described it differently. Now I gotta say, I was a kid in the 90s, and I gotta be real, when I heard of the chupacabra and I saw it, I thought it was really, really dumb. For one, does anybody here know what chupacabra means? Chupacabra, 2 words, chupacabra. ¿Qué es una cabra?
It's like a certain like sheep. It's like
A goat, you got it.
and it's like
And chupa, suck. So the chupacabra, as a lot of you know because you know Spanish, is a goat sucker, which is a really, really dumb name for a monster, right? So I didn't like the name. Second thing is, as a kid, I was like, there's no way this monster is real. Everyone's describing it totally differently. And the third thing is, nowadays, maybe some of you guys have seen movies or read books about the chupacabra, and in those movies and books, it looks really cool or cute or scary. In the 90s, the way the chupacabra was usually drawn was not cool at all. This is what he looked like. He looked ridiculous. He looked ridiculous. So the chupacabra was not that cool in the 90s. He was like really lame. But here's where everything changed, all right? So now we're going forward like many, many years. I'm in my office and I'm researching my first 2 books. As I'm researching them, I stumble on the chupacabra. I roll my eyes. I was like, I hate this thing. But then I learned a couple things that make me completely reconsider how I feel. Thing number 1 is in the rest of Latin America, not Puerto Rico, in the rest of Latin America, they describe this dog-like chupacabra. A scientist researched and said, that monster, what everyone described in the rest of the world, this guy is just a dog that has a very specific disease that makes it look that way. So the chupacabra outside of Puerto Rico doesn't exist. I'm not saying it exists in Puerto Rico, but I'm just saying scientists have proven that it doesn't exist in the rest of the world. Thing number 2, which really kind of spooked me out. The chupacabra, everyone thinks it started in the 90s. There was a creature that was described exactly like it in the 70s, 20 years before, in another small town in Puerto Rico called Moca. And they called it El Vampiro de Moca, the vampire of Moca. And the same thing happened, the farm animals, the 3 piercings, all that stuff. Weird. But then I kept researching and I found an even crazier thing. Just 7 years ago in 2018, another small town in Puerto Rico, Barceloneta, discovered a gargoyle, El Gárgola, and everyone around that town was reporting a gargoyle. So I said, hold up. The same creature has been spotted for 50 years in 3 different towns all over Puerto Rico. Again, I'm not saying I believe in the chupacabra, but how weird is it that this creature keeps popping up in people's minds everywhere? So I decided I'm going to put that creature in the book I'm working on. But it was a really weird thing to do because the book I was working on was super, super different. Does anybody here know what a memoir is? Memoir, do you? It's a book that's all about somebody's life. Well done. A memoir is a book about somebody's life. Now, I am not a writer who writes memoirs. I like writing fun books about like with hooks. But it was the pandemic. It was winter. We were in lockdown. And we just had our 2nd kid. So my office had to move to this corner of the basement. It was really dark. That was the only window I had. And I was feeling super, super gloomy. I was like, okay, I need something to get me out of this funk because it's like mid-winter and I feel awful. So I said, you know what? I just finished my first 2 books. I'm going to try to write a book about my favorite summer ever. So in your heads right now, either picture your favorite summer ever or the summer you want to have, like the perfect summer in your head, right? And what's kind of cool that I'm talking to y'all versus some random middle school is that some of you might have the same as I do. So I was born in Puerto Rico. I was born in San Juan, Rio Piedras, which some of you might know of. My family's from Isabela y Quebradillas. But when I was 3, my dad joined the Air Force and we moved to the United States. And we never went back. We never lived there again. But every summer that we could, we would go back to Puerto Rico. So that was always our home base. And I loved those summers. Obviously the beach. But Puerto Rico, as some of you might know who's been there, there's a lot of incredible things about this island. We went to a small island in Puerto Rico called Mona, and it's a deserted island. And every morning when we woke up, these huge iguanas would cover the area around our tent. Another time, we were in a town called Aguadilla. We were walking in the woods. We got super lost. And we almost had to camp out in the middle of the woods, kind of stranded overnight, which was crazy. Another time I was snorkeling in San Juan, and there was a barracuda that chased me for like half a mile. So every time I went to Puerto Rico, there was always adventures, and I loved it. So now I'm going to flip. Now I want to talk about the book, because the book and my life in the beginning are the same thing. So the book is about a kid named Nico. He's 13. He dreams of being one of these. Now this is probably the hardest question in my presentation. Does anybody recognize, these are the top 10 something. It's a kind of artist. It's a kind of artist. And raise your hand if you can guess. This is probably the hardest question. I'll tell you, they're not artists, they're not photographers, but they're very similar to photographers. Somebody said music, that's close. You guys are all very close. They're directors. Does anybody know what a director is? A film director, a TV director. Those are the folks who make movies and make TV shows. Now, like I said, it's close to my life. When I was a kid, my brother's dream was to do that. So I kind of took my brother and I made him the main character of the book. So Nico, to give you a second about it, Nico dreams of being a director. He wants to be the most famous director in the world. He wants to make movies for the rest of his life. As y'all might guess, it's really, really hard to be a director. There's not a lot of them. It's very competitive. A lot of people want to do it. Think about everybody who wants to be like a YouTube creator too. A lot of YouTube creators become directors, right? There's a lot of people. So Nico wants to do it. He knows it's going to be tough, and he's doing a great job. He's got a TikTok that has like millions of followers. He's doing really well. But he didn't get into the film school he wanted to go to for high school. So now he's freaking out. He's like, oh, this is the path I want to be on, but now I'm on this path. So the issue is he needs to make a movie to prove to the school that he's good enough to be at that school. So he's like, this summer, I'm making the movie that's going to do that. Except his parents are separating, and so they ship him off to Puerto Rico, and they ship him off to be with his grandma, Abuela Luz, based on my abuela, Abuela Hilda. So he's here, he's kind of stuck. Abuela doesn't have a car. Abuela's in the middle of a very small town. If anyone's heard of Quebradillas, I'd be impressed. It's tiny, nice. Quebradillas is small, but he does it anyway. He starts working on a movie. Now here's where things get a little bit less realistic, and it's not a memoir anymore. On the flight, on his way to Puerto Rico, he's almost there. He's like about to land, and this really strange woman shows up. She's this old woman. She sits next to him. At first, she's a very kind old woman, but she shifts into this. And this is somebody, this woman that has like been in his nightmares all of his childhood, ever since he went through Hurricane Maria. All right, she's too crazy. I know, she looks crazy. Now, the woman screams at him and says, did you wake them up? And she points outside the airplane window. He looks out the window, and there's a giant winged animal that goes into the cloud. And he's like, wait, what is happening right now? Now, the plane lands, this woman disappears, and he's like, the whole thing must have been a dream. He gets back to Puerto Rico. He starts making his movie with his cousins. But then he meets this guy. So let me read you this little short passage about when he meets the chupacabra. So the thing is, he's shooting this movie. Does anybody know what a documentary is? Does anybody know what a video essay is? Okay, so he's shooting a movie and he's taking a lot of video of Puerto Rico. So picture this, he's in a cave. This is based on real life. One of my grandfathers had a cave behind his house. So he's in this cave, and here's what happened. Hey, maybe we should get out of here soon. The sun looks like it's setting, and even with flashlights, this cave would scar me for life in the dark, Kira said. His cousins are Kira and Nessie. She was pointing to a hole in the cave. We'd blinked, and the day had passed. We'd been filming all day in the cave. We should have left the cave an hour ago, I realized, because the light was almost extinguished. Yeah, let's move, I said, stuffing my notebook into my backpack and hopping up. We headed toward the crawl space, and I winced at the thought of going back through it. Kira was just squeezing into it when the sun seemed to blink, and we heard the sound of enormous wings. I turned around fast enough to see a shadow fuse with the dark corner of the cave. Whatever it was inside the prison-like room, and it was way too large of a shadow to have wings. Instinctually, I clapped my hand over Kira's mouth to stop the scream that I knew was coming. Then I pulled out my flashlight and walked toward the room. Nessie walked beside me. Why we didn't scramble into the crawl space immediately was beyond me, but it was like we were drawn to it. I flipped on the flashlight when I was 10 feet from the room. Already I'd convinced myself it was nothing. I was just jumping at shadows. But the light revealed a rock that hadn't been there before, one that was darker than the stalagmites around it. A rock that moved, a rock that unfurled. I dropped my flashlight and it was swallowed by the darkness. In front of us, the shadow rose to standing. I could barely make out its shape, but it was much taller than us. We were frozen, super glued, and it approached my cousin. Then two cold red eyes appeared in the darkness and stared into hers. It might have been for a moment, it might have been for an hour. "Run!" I screamed, waking us all up to the fact that this was still real life and something terrible loomed over us. The eyes glanced at Kira, they shot a glance at me, and then the shadow screeched, and enormous wings carried it through the hole above us into the night. So as I'm sure all of y'all can guess, that monster was our friend here, right? So, what happens next? Soon after that, they visit a part of Puerto Rico that I'm guessing a couple of you have been to. Has anyone visited Viejo San Juan, Old San Juan before, right? It's a beautiful place. All the buildings are colored like in these pastel colors. All the bricks that are, every road is, they're blue bricks brought from Spain 500 years ago. It's a great place. While they're there, these people start chasing them, these very strange people, but then they're saved by the strangest thing of all. They're saved by these two Puerto Ricans dressed in Native American clothes that lift their hands up to the sky and they summon the rain. So he said, wait, hold on. What is happening? What's that? So I want to flip for a second and talk to you for a couple minutes about the mystery of the forgotten gods of Puerto Rico. So, pop quiz. How many people here recognize 3 of the people in this slide? Raise your hand, just raise your hand if you recognize 3. Raise your hand if you recognize most of the people in this slide. Okay, raise your hand if you've heard of Percy Jackson. Okay, Percy Jackson and everyone on this page, it's a mythology. They're the gods from a specific country. Does anyone know what country they are? Back, yeah, red shirt. Greece, perfect. They're from Greece, Greek gods. Greek mythology is huge. A lot of you all into it. I was super into it when I was growing up. It's a myth that a lot of folks know about. Now, there's a lot of myths like that, right? A lot of you guys might not know it, but you also know Norse myths, myths from like Norway. Ready? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the 3 following people. Has anyone here heard the names Thor, Odin, and Loki? Right? So all of y'all know a little bit about Norse myths, even if it's through Marvel Comics and the MCU. So there's certain mythologies, there's certain legends that a lot of us know. Now, I'll be really impressed if y'all can name me 3 Puerto Rican gods. I've got to be real. If I was in a room full of adults, even Puerto Rican adults, I bet nobody could. And that I find really weird. So I was researching my book and I was trying to figure out, why don't any of us know our mythology? I was talking to Puerto Ricans, we don't know. And I found it really strange. So I said, you know what? I'm going to look into this and see what's wrong. So I looked into it. Now, has anybody here heard the word Taíno? And here's the crazy thing. A lot of y'all are Taíno, so it's funny that you might not know the word. A lot of y'all are probably Taíno. Surprise. Now, Puerto Ricans, the indigenous Puerto Ricans of the island, before Columbus and the Spanish got there, were Taínos. If y'all did 23andMe and checked your genetics, and if you're from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, or Venezuela, you probably are part Taíno. Most of us Puerto Ricans are 15% Taíno. I checked my genes and I am. A lot of you probably are too. So the Taínos were around for thousands, probably like 1,000-ish, 1,000 to 2,000 years in the islands of Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. But somebody came along and things changed. Does anybody know who came along? This guy. A specific explorer came to the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. I'm sure y'all have probably heard of this person. We have a day that some of us celebrate still. Columbus came to Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Trip number 1, he went to DR and he met a bunch of Tainos. Trip number 2, he went to Puerto Rico and he met a bunch of Tainos. He met a bunch of y'all's great-grandparents, basically. Now, when he met them, he noticed 2 things about them. The first thing is he said, these Tainos are super friendly. They're super generous, super awesome. These are great people. The second thing he noticed was, ooh, there's a lot of gold in this island. Not a good thing. So as you can imagine what happens next. But on his second voyage, this guy joined the crew. This guy right here. He was a friar. Does anyone know what a friar is? It's kind of similar to a priest. Friar and priest. Somebody came with him, and he came to teach the Tainos about Christianity. His name was Ramon Pane. While he was there, he was teaching them about Christianity, but he was taking notes on their culture and their mythology. So this is the only way that we know about Puerto Rican myths, right? Now here's the issue. Issue number 1 is, how much Taino do you think this dude spoke? None. He learned a little bit, but it wasn't great. Second thing, if you came and you were learning about, if you came to Puerto Rico and you saw a bunch of native people and you're from Spain, you probably would think about, oh, these guys aren't very civilized, these guys are primitive. They had a lot of weird, not great views about the people. So this is somebody who didn't speak the language, didn't respect them that much, and it gets even worse. Has anybody here played the game of telephone? So remember telephone? So telephone is, if you forgot, like if I told you a sentence and then you told him and him and him, by the end of this row, the sentence that he said would be really different from the sentence he said, right? So imagine this for mythology. So Christopher Columbus gets there, this friar hears the myths, doesn't even speak the language. So you can imagine when he writes them down, they're probably not super accurate. That guy's book was the first book published in America, by the way, but it gets lost. Somebody copied it down right before it got lost, though. So that's the second one. That second book also got lost. The only copy we have that tells us the myth of our people is an Italian translation of a transcription of a book written by a guy who didn't know the language. So imagine how little we know about our culture as Tainos. And that happened, I'm speaking Tainos now, but this happens all over the world. If any of y'all are Latino, a lot of it happened all over the Caribbean, a lot of it happened all over the Pacific Islands. There are a lot of forgotten gods. So the reason I wanted to write about it is because most of us don't even know about this. We know so much about Greek mythology, we don't know about our own gods. So these are some of them. I know I'm running out of time. I want to give you guys a couple minutes to ask questions. So I'm going to go through the last 5 slides super quick. Why did I write a book about our mythology? Well, one reason was to tell people about it. But the second reason is because Puerto Rico, as some of you might know, has had a really tough last 10 years. Has anybody here heard of a certain hurricane 8 years ago yesterday did a lot of damage to the island? What was the name of that hurricane? Yeah. You've heard of it? Anyone know the name of that hurricane? Alguien lo está diciendo por acá? Maria. Hurricane Maria, right? It did a lot of damage to Puerto Rico. Now the issue was that when Maria came, Puerto Rico was already going through a lot of stuff. They had a lot of issues with the economy. A lot of Boricuas were moving from Puerto Rico to the United States because there were no jobs. And then after that, there was El Apagón. Has anybody heard of El Apagón? You might have heard of the Bad Bunny song, El Apagón. The Puerto Rico was having a lot of power outages. And after that, so there's been all sorts of issues Puerto Rico's had. And a lot of people who aren't Latino don't know about those issues. So one of the reasons we write and we create things is to tell people about some of the issues that our cultures are facing. So I wanted to write a book that had that in it. Now don't get me wrong, it's a fun adventure book. It's more about the adventures and the monsters. But I put a little about this in it because I think it's great to raise awareness about this stuff. I'm going to shut up because I know we have some questions. So, any questions from y'all? It can be about books, about writing, about any of this. Yes?
What would you say is the first part of writing a book for you?
That is an amazing question. I'm going to say that's the best question I've heard in a week. What is the first part about writing a book? How does that start? Now, it doesn't matter if you're a writer, you want to be a YouTube creator, it all starts the same way. You have an idea, and if I can give you the best piece of advice if you want to create stuff, it's this. If I can give you the one secret that makes everyone, it gets you like this much closer to being a creative person. You got to be okay with having a really crappy first draft. This is the hardest thing. If you can write a really bad first version of a book or a movie, but you finish it, you are better than 99.9% of other creative people. What happens, and I'm sure a lot of y'all have done this in class or outside of class, is you start writing and you say, oh, this isn't good. This is not really great. If you push past that and you keep writing and you write that really bad first draft, all of a sudden, it's way easier to go back and make it better, and make it better, and make it better.
I'm going to give a round of applause for everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
As part of our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, we have Victor Piñeiro here. While we at Holyoke Public Schools have partnered with the Odyssey Bookshop and Joan Grenier, who has donated over 300 books for our 6th grade students. In our middle schools and all across Holyoke Public Schools, we are readers, and as a result, we're trying to make sure that all students have books in hand that reflect their culture and their experience, and Victor's book does exactly that.
I'm Ann Nugent. I'm one of the board members of Rise Up Reading. I worked in Holyoke for many years and ran a program bringing books to small children in pediatric offices. And now this is an extension of this, of bringing free books to kids in Holyoke. I'm really pleased to be helping Joan Grenier with this project, and we hope to bring many more books to the schools here.
Well, this is all an idea from Joan. Has always dreamed of doing this, and it's so excited that it's finally come to fruition. This is our first event for Rise Up Reading, and we find it so important to help children read, find books that represent them, that they can relate to, and get them excited about reading.
Hey, maybe we should get out of here soon. The sun looks like it's setting, and even with flashlights, this cave would scar me for life in the dark, Kira said. His cousins are Kira and Nessie. She was pointing to a hole in the cave. We'd blinked and the day had passed. I wrote The Island of Forgotten Gods. It's my 3rd book. It's really close to my heart because here's a book that takes place entirely in Puerto Rico, and it's based first and foremost on my experiences as a kid in Puerto Rico. But because I like writing books that have hooks and adventure and fantasy, it starts as my favorite summer in Puerto Rico, but it quickly takes a turn when I bring in the chupacabra and I bring in the ancient gods of Puerto Rico and that sort of stuff. I've always wanted to be a writer since I was in 3rd grade, and I think right now we're at a really interesting point where I think reading and writing is more important than it ever has been. I think now it can be really hard, especially I think once you hit middle school, you have phones everywhere, you have screens everywhere, you have video games, you have movies, you have it all. It can be really hard to focus up and read, but I think that reading is the most important skill we can learn. It doesn't just allow, it's almost like a key to other worlds, to other experiences. And even though, you know, we can take in stories a bunch of different ways. We can watch movies, we can play video games. There's something very specific about a book because you get into a character's head and you really learn a lot about them. So to me, I think reading and writing is unbelievably important. And I think a lot of us, it takes some effort now. You have a lot of things that are competing for your attention. So I really am impressed with kids who keep the reading alive and really continue to do that, because I think it gets harder and harder as you get older, but I think it's so worth it. Signing the books for all the kids, I got, oh gosh, I can't remember who gave me a teddy bear, but I got a little bear, and it was really neat. I think there's a lot of folks here. It's interesting because I think a lot of times when an author comes, people might say, I don't know if I want to be a writer, but to me, it's all the same. So if you want to be a writer, a director, a YouTube creator, a videographer, if you love making TikToks, it's all the same thing. Though to me, is what I like to talk about is the experience of creating. And I think everyone is a creator, and I think it's one of the most fun, interesting things you can do, especially as you're in middle school. Give it a shot.